In a celebrated epic, there is a character. He is not a king, yet he leads the battered alliance on the front lines. He holds no official power, yet he can awaken a slumbering kingdom. In the darkest of moments, he stands alone against the roaring evil, shielding his companions from the fatal blow. Who is he? Don't answer just yet. Before you do, let's consider an ancient warning, often credited to the Greek statesman Pericles. Just because you do not take an interest in politics, doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you. For a long time, we thought we could keep that ghost, the ghost of politics, locked outside our door. We thought we could ignore it. We thought we could live our lives, raise our families, build our careers, and just leave it alone. Then, a gunshot shattered the silence. And the ghost didn't just knock. It kicked the door in. It came for a man named Charlie Kirk. And eventually, it will come for every single one of us. Part 1. The Ghost at the Door. That old warning about politics. It seems like we forgot it over the last couple of decades, didn't we? In an age of endless entertainment, where everything is a product to be consumed, politics became a dirty word. It was boring. It was divisive. It was something for other people to worry about. The angry ones. The strange ones. I am just not political became a badge of honor. It was a declaration of sanity, a way to signal that you were a reasonable person above the fray. We built a comfortable illusion of silence, a society-wide agreement to just not talk about it. But silence is not a shield. It's a vacuum. And while the majority of us were busy staying silent, that vacuum was being filled. It was filled with a poison, a virus. The virus of dehumanization. And Charlie Kirk was patient zero. Let's be very clear about who Charlie Kirk was. He wasn't a fire-breathing extremist. He was a conservative thinker, a speaker, and the founder of Turning Point USA. He believed in dialogue. He went to college campuses, places that were often hostile to his very presence, to debate and to talk. You could agree with him or you could disagree with him. But you could talk to him. The system, however, wasn't interested in talking. It was interested in silencing. And the first step to silencing a person is to turn them into something that isn't a person at all. So the machine went to work. First, they labeled him. He wasn't a person with ideas anymore. He was a fascist. Then, they isolated him. The label was repeated, endlessly, across headlines, news segments, and social media feeds until it started to stick. The goal was to make the label his entire identity. Finally, they demonized him. They took his words, twisted them, cut them up, and presented the mangled pieces as proof of his hatred. He was no longer a man, a husband, a father of two. He was a monster, unothing to be feared and hated. This is a systematic process. It's an assembly line of character assassination. And it has one terrifying, inevitable outcome. When you successfully convince enough people that someone is not human, you give them the moral license to treat him that way. You create the permission structure for violence. On the 10th of September, 2025, a 22-year-old man named Tyler Robinson acted on that permission. He saw the monster the machine had created. He believed the lie. And he killed Charlie Kirk, believing he was slaying a dragon. That gunshot was the end point of the dehumanization process. But what happened next? That was the moment the ghost truly entered the room. Because across the internet, thousands upon thousands of people celebrated. They cheered for the murder of a man they had never met. They made jokes about his widow's grief. They celebrated the killer as a hero. This wasn't just a political disagreement anymore. This was a moral collapse. It was the chilling proof that the ghost of politics was no longer a distant phantom. It was inside our house, at our dinner table, poisoning the very foundations of our humanity. The celebration of murder revealed the terrifying truth. The war was already here. It wasn't a war of armies and battlefields in some faraway land. It's a war for the soul of our society. A war between those who still believe in dialogue, decency, and our shared humanity, and those who believe that people who disagree with them are monsters who deserve to die. This is the common ground we all stand on now. This is the battlefield we all share, whether we chose to enter it or not. The ghost is at the door. In fact, the door is gone. And the fight is here. Part 2, The Silent War, Reality vs. Narrative. When the ghost is in the room, when the battle is no longer theoretical, you have to choose your weapon. In the 21st century, the most powerful weapon is not a gun. It's a story. He who controls the narrative controls the world. And in the immediate aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination, the narrative machine kicked into high gear. Its objective was simple and brutally effective: to define the enemy. And the enemy, they decided, was not the man who pulled the trigger. The enemy was the victim's entire worldview. Their strategy is a masterclass in manipulation, and it works like this. First, you blur the lines. You redefine the meaning of words. Specifically, the word violence. In their world, violence is no longer just physical harm. Strong words are violence. Uncomfortable ideas are violence. Disagreement is violence. Once you accept that premise, the rest of their trap snaps shut. Because if words can be violence, then anyone who uses words you don't like is a purveyor of violence. And what do you do with violent people? You silence them. You deplatform them. You destroy their businesses. You erase them from the public square. You do this, of course, in the name of safety. It's a linguistic kill dice box. They get to define what violence is, and then they get to punish anyone who fits their definition. For years, conservatives tried to fight inside that box. They would argue, no, our words are not violence. We are just expressing our opinion. But it was a losing game. They were debating on a field designed by their enemy, using a dictionary written by their enemy. They were losing the silent war. And then, Elon Musk did something different. He refused to enter the kill box. He refused to argue about the definition of violence. He picked up the entire chessboard, with all of its carefully arranged pieces and linguistic traps, and he flipped it over. He decided to fight the war of narratives with the one weapon they couldn't control: reality. He didn't debate their story. He just showed the world a different one, a true one. First, he held up a mirror to the conservative response to Charlie Kirk's murder. What did that reality look like? Across America, tens of thousands of people gathered. They held candle-lit vigils. They prayed. They sang hymns. They stood in silence, mourning a man they saw as a champion for their values. There were no riots. No buildings were burned. No stores were looted. No police cars were set on fire. There was only a profound, and profoundly peaceful, sense of grief and solemn resolve. It was a movement born of tragedy, expressing itself with dignity and restraint. This was the first fact card Musk played. He used his platform, X, to show this reality to the world, unfiltered by the media machine. He simply showed what was happening. Then, he played his second card. He held up a second mirror, reflecting a different, but hauntingly familiar, moment in recent history. He asked us to remember the summer of 2020, after the death of George Floyd. What was the narrative then? The narrative was love, justice, and mostly peaceful protests. But what was the reality? The reality was cities engulfed in flames. The reality was businesses, many owned by minorities, smashed and looted into oblivion. The reality was police precincts abandoned and burned to the ground. The reality was billions of dollars in damage and dozens of lives lost in the chaos. That was the reality, running completely opposite to the official narrative. Musk's strategy was to simply place these two realities side by side. On one side, the assassination of a conservative leader, followed by completely peaceful, prayerful gatherings, which were framed by the media as the rumblings of violent extremism. On the other side, the death of a citizen, followed by months of actual, undeniable violence, looting, and arson, which was framed by the media as a righteous uprising and mostly peaceful. The contrast was so stark, so undeniable, it shattered the entire narrative framework. By presenting these two mirror images, Musk posed a single, devastating question to the public, without even having to say the words. Who, exactly, are the violent ones? Who are the ones who respond to tragedy with destruction, and who are the ones who respond with peace? Whose narrative matches the reality you can see with your own eyes? This was the core of his flip the chessboard strategy. It wasn't a call to arms. It was a call to Samai. He wasn't trying to start a physical revolution. He was trying to ignite a mental one, an intellectual awakening. He was wagering that if people were shown the unvarnished truth, they would be able to break the spell of the narrative machine all by themselves. He was betting on us, on our ability to recognize reality when we see it. And in doing so, he transformed the silent war from a defensive crouch into a full-blown counter-offensive. Part 3. The Rising Tide. The Awakened Us. In the wake of a political assassination, the media machine had a script ready to go. They expected chaos. They wanted chaos. They were waiting for the right-wing backlash, for the riots, for the violence they could point to and say, "See? We told you they were the violent ones." But the backlash they got was not the one they were prepared for. It didn't come with fists and fire. It came with a quiet, steely resolve. From the ashes of tragedy, something unexpected began to rise. Hope. Charlie Kirk's death was meant to be an ending. It was meant to silence a movement. Instead, it became a beginning. It was the bucket of ice water thrown on the face of a sleeping giant. That giant is the silent majority. The normies, the millions of ordinary people who had spent years trying to stay out of politics. The ones who just wanted to work hard, raise their families, and be left alone. The gunshot that killed Charlie Kirk was the sound of the ghost kicking in their door and they woke up. They woke up to the realization that silence was no longer an option. And this awakening gave birth to a new kind of resistance, a new form of protest for a new kind of war. It has been called the Accountability Campaign. And its philosophy is profoundly simple and powerfully moral. It operates on two core principles. First, absolute non-violence, no exceptions. Second, the belief that words have consequences for everyone. For years, the silent majority had watched as people were fired from their jobs, disowned by their families, and publicly shamed for expressing the wrong opinions. A teacher could be fired for questioning a new gender curriculum. A scientist could be canceled for discussing data that challenged a political narrative. The system had decided that certain words were so harmful that they justified the complete destruction of a person's life. Now, after Charlie's murder, the awakened majority looked at the thousands of people online, openly celebrating the killing, and they decided to apply the system's own rules back onto itself. The logic was simple. If it's unacceptable to use the wrong pronoun, then it must be catastrophic to celebrate the murder of a father of two. The campaign began not as a top-down, organized movement, but as a spontaneous, grassroots wave. It was just ordinary people using their phones. They saw a post from a nurse at a New Jersey hospital, joking about Charlie Kirk's death. They didn't threaten her. They didn't harass her. They simply sent her post and a polite email to her hospital's administration, asking, "Is this the kind of person you want caring for your patients?" She was fired the next day. They saw a mid-level manager at an Office Depot distribution center calling the killer a hero. They sent a screenshot to the corporate HR department. Does this employee represent your company's values? He was gone by the end of the week. A professor at a state university. A graphic designer at a major ad agency. A pilot for a commercial airline. One by one, those who had danced on the grave of a murdered man were quietly, professionally, and peacefully forced to confront the consequences of their own words. This wasn't cancel culture. This was accountability culture. It was a moral immune system kicking in to fight the virus of dehumanization. And this was just the beginning. The tide was rising, and it was rising fast. In the week following the assassination, Turning Point USA, the organization Charlie Kirk founded, received an unprecedented flood of new chapter applications from high schools and colleges across the country. It was the ultimate tribute to their fallen leader. His death had not killed his movement, it had multiplied it. It was a clear signal that the next generation was refusing to be silenced. And the wave didn't stop at America's borders. The battle for free speech and common decency was a global one. A few days after the tragedy, in the heart of London, a massive rally was held. Over 110,000 people filled the streets. They weren't all conservatives. They weren't all fans of Charlie Kirk. They were just people from all walks of life who understood that a line had been crossed. They understood that if we allow political murder to be celebrated, then the very foundation of a free and civil society begins to crumble. This is the rising tide. It's not a political party. It's not a formal organization. It is the awakened us. It is a decentralized, global movement of ordinary citizens, armed with nothing more than their conscience and their cell phones, who have decided to peacefully, but firmly, draw a line in the sand. They are the unexpected hope born from the deepest despair. They are the proof that Charlie Kirk's sacrifice was not in vain. It was the spark that lit a fire that is now spreading across the world. A fire of moral clarity and a demand for a return to our shared humanity. Part 4. The Allies Offensive, From Guardian to Warlord. A rising tide is a powerful force. But a tide without direction can dissipate its energy, crashing harmlessly against the shore. This new, grassroots movement of accountability needed more than just a safe harbor. It needed a shield. It needed an amplifier. It needed an ally. What it got was something far more. It got a warlord. In the critical days following Charlie Kirk's death, Elon Musk underwent a fundamental transformation. He evolved from a defensive guardian of free speech into the unapologetic, offensive leader of a full-blown information war. He didn't just protect the rising tide, he began to weaponize it, leading it in an asymmetrical counter-offensive designed to shatter the old establishment's control over the narrative. His strategy wasn't a single brilliant move. It was a sophisticated, four-pronged offensive. A masterclass in 21st century warfare. Strategy 1. Consolidate the base, the unbreachable sanctuary. Every good general knows the first rule of warfare. You don't launch an attack until your home base is secure. Musk's first move was to solidify X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, into much more than a public square. He transformed it into a fortress, a military base, a strategic safe zone for the awakening. Inside this digital fortress, the voices of the accountability campaign could be protected. They could organize, share information, and coordinate their peaceful efforts without the fear of being instantly silenced by the old regime. This wasn't just about free speech in the abstract. This was about logistics. The base was where the soldiers of this information war got their supplies, their intelligence, and their morale. It was the command center from which all other offensive actions would be launched. Strategy 2, the narrative counter, offensive, from megaphone to heavy artillery. With the base secured, Musk moved to his second strategy, seizing the offensive high ground. For a long time, he had used his account as a megaphone, amplifying the voices of others who were being suppressed. Now, he turned his own account into a piece of heavy artillery and began firing it himself. He operated into modes, defense and attack. In defense mode, he continued to amplify the stories of the accountability campaign, giving global legitimacy to their actions and shielding them from media smears. But it was his attack mode that marked the real shift in the war. He began to personally, directly, and relentlessly attack the lies of the mainstream media. He didn't just host the conversation, he became its most powerful combatant. When the media machine tried to paint Charlie Kirk as a violent extremist, they circulated a deceptively edited video clip. Musk didn't just allow others to debunk it. He stepped into the arena himself. He retweeted the full, unedited video, which showed Kirk explicitly condemning violence, attack. Almost all the legacy media are lying about Charlie Kirk. This was not the move of a neutral platform owner. This was the move of a wartime leader. He was no longer just transmitting information. He was creating ammunition and personally pulling the trigger. He was calling the enemy by its name, liars. Strategy 3. Open a new front, the decapitation strike. This third strategy was his most audacious, and it represents the core of his new offensive doctrine. Musk was no longer content to fight the war on his own turf. He decided to take the battle directly to the enemy's heartland. He launched a cross-platform expedition. His target, Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon. The battlefield, Amazon's own streaming platform, Twitch. In the days after the assassination, a top Twitch streamer named Hazen Piker went live to his massive audience. On a platform owned by one of the most powerful men in the world, he openly celebrated Kirk's murder, declaring that America is finally healing. The old rules of engagement would have been to decry this on X, to contain the fight to his own platform. Musk chose a different path. He went directly for the head. He posted on X for his hundreds of millions of followers to see, what is Twitch and Jeff Bezos doing about this? This is messed up. The strategic brilliance of this move cannot be overstated. He was expanding the theater of war. He was forcing a tech giant that wanted to stay on the sidelines to publicly pick a side. Will you enforce your own rules against celebrating murder, or will you expose yourself as a hypocrite? It was a classic move of hitting them where it hurts to relieve the pressure. By attacking a key ally of the media establishment, he put the entire system on the defensive, forcing them to divert resources and attention to a fire burning in their own backyard. He was telling them, no one is a neutral bystander in this war anymore. You are either for civilization, or you are for barbarism. Choose. Strategy 4. Absorb all damage, the self-appointed main tank. This final piece of the strategy is what elevates Musk from a clever tactician to a true leader. He launched this aggressive, multi-front offensive with full knowledge of the consequences. He knew that every cannon blast he fired, every new front he opened, would bring a hailstorm of retaliation back on him. Personally, advertiser boycotts, vicious media hit pieces, coordinated political and regulatory attacks on his companies. He knew it was all coming, and he chose to do it anyway. He consciously positioned himself as the main tank, a term from gaming for the character who charges into the heart of the battle, drawing all of the enemy's fire, absorbing all the damage so that the rest of the team can do their job. By taking all the hits, he provided cover for the millions of smaller accounts in the accountability campaign. The media was so focused on trying to destroy Musk, they had less firepower to pick off the individual citizens who were making a difference. He became the ultimate lightning rod, the ultimate shield. This wasn't just the action of a guardian anymore. This was the calculated self-sacrifice of a warlord who understands that victory requires the leader to be the one who is most willing to bleed. This four-pronged strategy: secure the base, lead the charge, expand the battlefield, and absorb the blows, just what defines Elon Musk's transformation. He is no longer just the richest man in the world. He has become the most powerful and effective ally in the global fight for the future of civilization. Part 5, The Riddle's Answer, the ally and your choice. At the very beginning, I asked you a riddle about a character who is not a king, yet leads the alliance, who holds no power, yet awakens a kingdom, who stands alone against the darkness to shield his companions. The answer, you may have guessed by now, is Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings. And this comparison is not a casual one. It tests the key to understanding everything we've talked about today. First, think about Gandalf's role. He was never the king. He never sought the throne. His mission was to awaken the hearts of others, of hobbits, of men, of elves, to the danger that was facing them all. To inspire them to find their own courage and fight their own battles. He was the catalyst, the awakener, the bearer of the flame. This is the role Elon Musk has chosen. He isn't a politician running for office. He is awakening the world to the fact that the war for our civilization is already here. But there is a deeper, more powerful layer to this analogy. It lies in one of the most iconic scenes in cinematic history. In the depths of the mines of Moria, the Fellowship awakens an ancient evil, the Balrog, a demon of shadow and flame. A creature of absolute terror and destruction that no warrior can defeat. As the Fellowship flees in terror, Gandalf, alone, turns to face it. He makes his stand on a narrow stone bridge, the only path forward for the monster. He strikes his staff upon the stone, draws a line that cannot be crossed, and as the fiery demon roars towards him, he bellows those immortal words, "You shall not pass." In that moment, with that single act of defiance, he uses his own body as a shield to save the future of his world. Now, think of the world we face today. The forces of censorship, of dehumanization, of narrative control, they are our Balrog. It wasn't just a monster of flesh and blood, it was a walking shadow. A being of pure suppression, whose very purpose was to extinguish light and silence truth. An ancient, roaring evil that seeks to consume all dialogue, all dissent, all hope. And for years, we have been retreating from it. But on the narrow bridge of our new public square, one man has turned to face it. By buying X, by refusing to bend, by absorbing all the damage, Elon Musk has struck his staff upon the ground and roared at the monster of censorship on behalf of all of us. He has drawn a line. This is the last sanctuary for free speech on the global internet. And here, you shall not pass. This is not hero worship. We are not here to build a golden statue of Elon Musk. The point of a myth is not to deify a man, but to use a story we all understand to make sense of the reality we all face. Gandalf is not a perfect god, he is an ally. And Elon Musk is not a perfect savior, he is the most powerful ally we have in this fight, right now. He has done his part. He has made his stand on the bridge. but he cannot win this war alone. Now, it comes down to you, to your choice. The ghost is in the room. The fight is here. Silence is no longer an option. It is a vote for the other side. So we invite you, whether you agree with this program or disagree, to make your voice heard. Use the comment section below not as a battlefield, but as a training ground. Practice the art of rational debate. Articulate your ideas. Challenge ours. Because in this new war, your voice is your weapon. And a person who dares to speak, who is skilled in critical thought. You are the ally that this moment is calling for.